All right, so getting AEW back on track. Let me see here. Um, okay, so there's a press conference tonight. Tony Khan was asked about the decision for Kenny Omega to return after being off with injury for over a year, and he's going to be returning in New Japan instead of appearing first for AEW. And Tony said his relationship with Kenny is great, and his relationship with New Japan is a key to their present and future, and that all parties are happy to work together to provide the best product possible for the fans. Then there's a follow-up question, whether this move was pitched by Tony or New Japan or Kenny, who asked to do the match in Japan. And Tony responded by saying that where a good idea started isn't important when you're part of a team, and that the key thing is that everyone is operating smoothly and excited about the future of Kenny Omega, New Japan, and AEW. Another reporter asked, then following this again, does Kenny wanting his first match back after such a long time out with injury to be in New Japan indicate that there's some kind of distance between him and AEW management? And Tony's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Kenny is one of the franchise players in all of professional wrestling, and he doesn't want to come back. And the reporter's like, I'm sorry, he doesn't want to come back to AEW? And Tony was like, look, you guys have been asking the same questions in different ways for, I think, years now. I think I started AEW with the best talent in the world. I really do. I think I did. And then some guys became available that were very established in this market in North America. And I thought that this would be an opportunity to only broaden our appeal, to bring them in for our AEW fans. And maybe that would have worked, but when I brought certain people in, they had the attitude that they were better than the guys AEW started with, like Kenny, like the Bucks, like Hangman, like Darby. But the truth is that those guys are the heartbeat of what AEW was. And when I brought some big names in and they wanted the ball, I gave it to them. And when they dismissed and disrespected the elite of AEW, I let that happen. I didn't stick up for the guys that I should have stuck up for. And the last few years now, the most impacting group in modern wrestling, bigger than the Horsemen, the NWO, I think you'd agree, the Elite. They literally changed the business. They changed it internationally, created an entire new industry in this country, on this continent. This last few years now, you've seen how their focus and their relationships with each other have flipped up and down and back and forth. You've seen it on television. Like they don't believe in themselves. They're not working together the way they did. AEW started because of the way they worked together, and those relationships have very clearly deteriorated, not just with me, but with each other. And I think I treated them, like they were second to the guys I brought in later. I started with them and I didn't stick up for them. And I think it screwed with their heads. And we've all seen what happens when the coach for the team is sending the wrong message. The best players in the world get all messed up. And the reality is that Kenny and Adam, the Bucks, they are the best players in the world, along with guys like Will, guys like Swerve, like Darby. But they haven't been the elite in years, literally and figuratively. I let them down. I know I did. And now a bunch of, frankly, former WWE guys, John and Claudio and Pac, they're tearing this place apart right now, and maybe they should. In a power vacuum, that's what happens. And I don't know if it's too late or if I even am the guy to be the coach AEW needs. It's my company, I have to be, but from here, I don't know. My quarterback is coming back after over a year off, and he's coming back to a different company on a different continent. That's all you've got to know about how Kenny Omega feels about AEW, I think. And everyone in the room started shooting questions at this point. I think the most notable I heard was questions about whether any of the elite had asked for their releases. Tony looked lost in thought. He was just zoned out at the stage, and P just kind of disappeared. That was the end of the press conference. In the days after this, there was a lot of speculation about the future of the company, as you can imagine, as well as the performers themselves. Particularly the guys that were mentioned. Twitter blew up, obviously. Fans were asking all sorts of questions, and there's little response from any part. A lot of people's Twitters just went silent. The following Dynamite was quite a thing. The crowd with Moxley, Claudio, Pac, Wheeler, Marina came out. And Moxley, who's been speaking a lot of abstractions the last few months, he was a lot more blunt here. He just said, so the Band-Aid is off. And you kind of knew when he opened his promo with that this was going to kind of take maybe a somewhat more raw direction. He said there's no confusing the issue anymore. The issue is CM Punk was right. And that was weird. That's a name that I don't ever need to hear on AEW television again. So that was a weird one. He said, you see, I had loyalty. I came here day one. Kenny had loyalty. Adam had loyalty. The Bucks had loyalty. We could have gone to get guaranteed money from the old institution of pro wrestling, just like Punk did. We could have collected our checks here, upped our value, then spat on Tony and this whole company and this whole business and walked out. Just used Tony, just used AEW. Jesus Christ, even MJF, that prick, he had loyalty. He got this place tattooed on him. But we're all suckers. That's the issue. He said we should have made like Punk, taken the big checks, and then when the $1 billion WWE came calling, taking the easy money and the easy work instead of developing something new, instead of building something new and fresh and being at the start of tomorrow, we should have just gone back to yesterday. We should have used Tony to up our asking price, and then off we go, because this is a capitalist country and this is a capitalist business, and rules say look out for yourself and screw the little guy. That's why Danielson sickened me. That's why he had to be destroyed. All this love and hope and create something new, it's crap. That's not the real world. And if you open yourself up like that, you are going to be punished every time. Your head is going to be taken off. That's what's going to happen. That's why that happened to Danielson. A guy like me, I don't do very well in the system. A guy like me, I've got my own way of doing things. And a guy like me is sickened by weakness. Brian was weak. So here's how it's going to go down. I'm not the bad guy. I'm the reality check. AEW is dead. It's no longer elite. There's no elite in all elite wrestling. Now is the time of the Death Riders. Darby, Orange, everyone in the back who still is under the delusion that you have a future in AEW, who have signed and given your bodies and your best years to a failing company, your days are numbered. You will join the Death Riders, or you will end up just like Danielson on the shelf indefinitely, no part of any part of a wrestling business anywhere ever again. Until they shut off the lights, I'm the head of this company now. You can piss at me all you want, but I'm not the bad guy. I'm just the truth teller. Now, everyone in the back who wants to save yourselves, now's the time, boys and girls. You get with us, or your days are numbered. And it started with a trickle. One wrestler, another wrestler came from the back. Some surprised me. I think the hardest thing to watch was Isaiah begging Mark in disbelief not to go and join this crowd in the ring. It's like watching a cult form, honestly. The distance between the entrance and the ring seemed to just rip apart years of partnership between those two. And I think it kind of represented something that was happening in the big picture in AEW here. But sure enough, one by one, they entered the ring and acknowledged Jon Moxley and the members of his cult, honestly. There were a few dozen wrestlers filling up the ring in all by the time Will Ospreay appeared. He just stood at the entrance ramp. He just looked distant, you know. Moxley, you could overhear saying, "You came to the wrong place. You came at the wrong time, man." You know, it's kind of almost like not hateful, just, I don't know. Moxley's an interesting guy. And then there was Darby and Swerve and Orange. They were standing there with Will by the time the show just drifted off the air. It felt like it was a wake. It just a stiff, cold stillness in the air. It was depressing. It was creepy. So then the next couple of weeks kind of go on, and there's still a show, and they're still putting on matches, and you can hear Excalibur, like they're acting like Excalibur and Tony are kind of acting like it's business as usual. And it's weird because you know it's not. And Moxley's gang each week is getting a little bigger and a little bigger, and they're focusing their attacks on this guy this night and this guy this other night. And you can feel the walls closing in week after week as they're picking people off, and they're getting either injured or they're just breaking down and joining them, you know. And even guys that, you know, were you know, the audience would have booed, you know, rule breakers, you know, some of them kind of offered a surprising amount of resistance, but then they would just give up. And each of these small little, I guess you'd say, stories would be a heartbreaker. You know, you'd be losing another person. You'd be like, I don't want my favorite guy to give in to this, but like when a cult starts trying to break down an organization, when the infrastructure of a government is just, you know, you have more people trying to tear it down than people trying to keep it strong and improve it. You're watching a company just starting to break down, and it's dark. And you know, there's resistance, you know, and Darby and Ospreay were particularly diligent. You know, they were showing up at every show and trying to cut off attacks, but you know, it was just a game of cat and mouse. The numbers were against them. And even with younger and less established talent, like they were trying to stick up for those guys who hadn't fallen, but it was too much. And so, you know, week by week, the numbers shaved off, the tide retreating. Moxley had set his sights on Ospreay in particular. He called him the best wrestler in the world with no platform to perform. He swore he'd wind up like Danielson. And as their pay-per-view match ended, that's what happened. Ospreay's neck was jacked up. He put the chair over it, hit him with the Death Rider, and just horrible. And you had the dwindling AEW loyalists, Darby, Swerve, Orange, Statlander, handful of mid and opening card guys. I guess they're just too Pollyanna to read the room. They were just easily held at bay by the hordes of Death loyalists. Ospreay's neck was just, yeah. And anyway, Ospreay gets stretchered out, and the commentary is saying, we don't know the severity of this. We don't know if or when we'll see him again. And, that night with him challenging for the belt, there's kind of this pocket of hope, leading into that this could mean something, but it wasn't realistic. And the show finishes with Moxley standing amid the lifeless bodies of AEW's last line of defense, I guess you'd have to say. And he's staring down the camera. And he announces, and he sounds resigned. Like, he doesn't even sound proud. He sounds kind of sad. And he just looks into the camera and he just says, "It's over." And he says, "This Wednesday is the funeral." He says it's the last AEW show as you know it. Come say goodbye. Pay your respects. Later that night, as pointed out on a message board that I was on, a fan tweeted Adam Page about what he thought about what happened at the pay-per-view. And he and his former stablemates had been deathly quiet about everything since all this kicked off a month or so earlier. And Page actually responds to this one. He just wrote, "I'm sick of this shit." And which is interesting because he hadn't said anything. And then, like, really soon after, Omega, he retweeted that, and he wrote, underneath it, he wrote, "It's not cowboy shit." And an hour later, Matt Jackson posted to his brother Nick's Twitter this obscure Simpsons meme about a rare bug being sexually attracted to fire. And Nick just goes, sorry, is it Matt? Matt sent this to Nick. And underneath it, he says, "This is so you." And Nick responds, "Projecting much, tape up your back, old man." And as you can imagine, this was a big deal. The next 3 days, social media was exciting. So Dynamite opens. There wasn't even an intro sequence. It was just opened. All the guys were in the ring. There's dozens and dozens of guys. Moxley's in the middle. It's all this Death Rider crowd. The majority of the roster's out there at this stage. And Moxley just says, he says, "It was good for a while, it was bad for a while, and now it's over." And before he could even finish the sentence, Swerve Strickland is marching to the ring. And it's surreal because you got to have like 40 guys out there, and Swerve is like at loggerheads with all of them, and he just, without hesitation, is just walking. Loggerheads, I make it sound like a political dispute. And Swerve just walks through everybody. Doesn't even put his hands up defensively, just walks through everybody. And I think, he kind of Jedi mind tricked them in the sense that, like, on any other day, they would have just jumped on him immediately, but there's just this surreal sense in the air. And so he just walks right up to Moxley and goes nose to nose. And this is the part for people used to watching wrestling TV shows where, pun intended, I guess, we have a swerve because it gets a reaction if the guy does the thing you think he's not going to do, even though it makes no real sense and only diminishes the credibility of what's happening in the long term. Well, this was not that. Moxley kind of laughs and he says, "You come to kiss and make up." And Swerve just extends his middle finger, extends it just all around him to the sea of enemies. He's just standing there in the middle of 40 people, each of which has it in their mind that he's their enemy. And something else. Moxley picks up one of there's like a dozen chairs just strewn around the ring. For what reason, don't ask me. It's Moxley. And he picks up a chair, and it's the same thing as Will Ospreay on the weekend before on the pay-per-view. He opens it up and he places it over Swerve's head, and Swerve doesn't flinch. He just stands there. He just stares at Moxley. And John just shakes his head. He's just impressed, I think, clearly, just looking at this guy going, this guy's fearless. And suddenly, obviously, he's going to Osprey him. But Cassidy is approaching the ring all of a sudden, and Darby Allin is approaching the ring behind Cassidy. And the Death Rider guys, Claudio and Pac get up and do their defensive positions. But Moxley doesn't. Moxley just stays calm. His hands stay down the sides. And so Darby and Orange enter the ring, and they pick up chairs from the ground and unfold them and put them over their own heads. And the three of them are just standing there, just like sacrificial lambs, just standing there. And Moxley, he stands back, and his eyes start to water. Like he's touched by this. His brain works in weird ways. And he picks up the mic and he says, "You truly are the best of us. I wish I had the character you do. I really do. Unfortunately, this is what happens when people have true character." And so Mox just puts down the mic, picks up, he grabs, the end of Swerve's chair that's on his head, the same way he grabbed Will Ospreay's on the pay-per-view to jack up his neck. And just suddenly, Kansas starts playing, and the arena just goes boom, just goes black. And you get the four silhouettes at the top of the entrance ramp, and the audience goes crazy. And the four guys just walk out, Kenny and Hangman and the Bucks, and behind them, following them, is a dozen or so, maybe 15 wrestlers of guys who never joined Moxley. Some of them banged up, some of them maybe not the most famous names, but just people who had real character during this whole thing, And the three guys in the ring, Swerve and Darby and Orange, I don't think they knew anything about this. I think this is kind of, last second, or just, because sometimes when you're making a pretty big life commitment decision, you don't tell everybody about it because you're not sure what you're doing yourself. But the reactions of Swerve and Orange and Darby in the ring, they had no idea this was going to happen. I don't know what they thought tonight was going to be. And so, but they kind of look back and like, holy, and they take the chairs off their heads and they just start wailing at the Death Rider guys. And just the arena just turns into complete chaos. Hey, kitty cat. I need to relax. I'm finished talking about what happened with the AEW guys. Just take it easy. I'll get you something in a minute. You have food. You have food. You do. This is a want versus a need. Chaos. Anyway. And so, Brigadoon, such as you can probably hear from next door. And the rest. From here, we have a series of very satisfying long-term character directions that, play off and reward the audience for knowing the histories of these characters and sort of explaining things that happened and making sense of things. And AEW goes through a resurgence where their in-ring performances, which have always been fantastic, are now also complemented by really well-structured, could be a fire in there, really well-structured characters and storytelling. And with those two things together, the promotion is really successful, again, as it has been. And the loyalty and the integrity of performers from this point forward is really protected and cherished and is never taken for granted. And, anybody who talks down to the guys who started the company, anybody who talks down about the people who are working hard and doing the stuff, it doesn't matter who you are. Tony stamps that out from this point forward because he's a guy who is loyal to the people who've been loyal to him. And that, I guess, is really where AEW's comeback started, And later in the year, Will Ospreay became champ. He was number one guy in the company from early in 2024. He's number one babyface, just the company didn't seem to realize it yet, and it really threw off. It was a big issue because it looked like people didn't want to tune in to see Will Ospreay. It was actually didn't want to tune in to see him in the role he was in the middle of the show, which just didn't reflect his skill and who he was and what he was supposed to be doing there. So they got that together, and he became the person carrying the torch in the way that the audience knew he should be, but the format of the show didn't allow for, which only made for irritating programming. And so they fixed that up, and yeah, everything just got better and better from there.